Hello and welcome to this presentation. My name is Serena. Today I will be talking about inclusive design in gaming, how it has evolved, where the industry stands right now, and what the data tells about where it's headed. I am deeply grateful for this opportunity provided by GATE and BMO and to every mentor who has helped shape this journey. I want to start personally. Before joining Rotman, I spent several years as a game designer at Tencent, the world's largest gaming company at $30 billion in annual revenue, nearly double Sony. I was often the only woman on my team. One comment followed me across different design reviews. If a skin isn't sexy enough, it won't sell. A skin is a cosmetic outfit player purchase with real money. And the assumption embedded in that comment was that female characters needs to be hypersexualized to drive commercial value. That comment stayed with me. Not because I thought it was obviously wrong, but because I genuinely wasn't sure whether it was right. So that became my research question. Does sex sell in gaming? Does hypersexualized representation of female characters actually drive commercial performance? And what happens to the studio that have built their product strategy on that assumption? These are some examples of what I meant about hypersexualized characters. The same characters, but with two completely defined design choices. One built for the male gaze, one built like she actually has a job to do. And that really matters because players spend hundreds of hours inside these characters. The design shapes how they see themselves and each other. It's not just aesthetic, it's deeply psychological and commercial. So does sex actually sell in game? The honest answer, and I say this as someone who genuinely hopes otherwise, is yes. Academic research analyzing hundreds of game covers found that sexualized female characters correlated positively with sales in teen and mature rated titles. The industry wasn't acting on prejudice, it was reading its own data correctly. But two subsequent studies complicated the picture. When researchers controlled for year, platform, and publisher, the effect reversed in mainstream genres. And a 31-year analysis of female character design found that sexualization had been declining, fastest in the most recent years, as more women entered gaming and the old strategy stopped working universally. I was quickly amazed to find out how much gaming industry as a whole had evolved in terms of inclusivity. And that shift really started with the smartphone. Suddenly, players don't need a console. They don't need to call themselves gamers. They just needed a phone to play games and to be part of this community. Between 2010 and 2018, women went from about 30% of the global player base to 46%. In Canada, it's 51% today. And you can see that the industry had already started to respond. Overwatch launched in 2016 had a genuinely diverse cast, not as a statement, but as a design choice. It hit $1 billion in its first year. The Last of Us Part 2 had LGBTQ+ leads, and it sold 4 million copies in 3 days despite having an organized boycott. Split Fiction, just last year, with 2 female protagonists, had sold 4 million copies in 2 months. The commercial case is there. The question is why it hasn't become the default, especially in the West. The answer for that became clear when I compared the Western studio and the Eastern studio side by side. Both sides of the world saw the same data, but the response was quite different. In North America, inclusive design was treated as a DEI initiative, which means it moved slowly, with HR timelines, board sign-offs, and every decision framed as a reputational risk. Studio may get a few standout titles, but no real system behind them. In China, female gaming spend grew 3 times faster than male gaming between 2020 and 2024. That showed up in a quarterly report, and then the studio moved fast. No lengthy debates, just the revenue pointing in one direction, the teams following through. There's a real gap in the response speed. Here are some examples. Honor of Kings is the highest grossing mobile game ever made, with 15 billion lifetime revenue. Here's what's amazing about it. It has a 54% female player base. It's a genre that used to be about 80 to 90% male. So how did Tencent do it? It made 3 intentional design choices. Number 1, it made the session 15 minutes long instead of 40. Number 2, players can join through WeChat, which is the biggest communication platform in China, so that they're coming in through friends, not as gamers. And thirdly, the characters are designed to appeal across genders. They also built real community safety infrastructures, removing toxic chat, blocking harassment, and honestly, that wasn't charity. Female players are what researchers call community anchors. When they leave, overall retention drops for everyone, and Tencent protected them, and because that also is good for the product. Paper Game is a studio you may not have heard of. They make what are called otomi games. Otomi is a Japanese word that translates roughly as maiden. It refers to a genre of romance narrative games designed specifically female players where the player character is always a woman. Paper Games has been making exclusively these games for exclusively this audience since 2013. Their development team is approximately 60% women. That is not a policy, but as a studio, that's how they identify themselves. When they launched Love and Deep Space in January 2024, it received 14 million pre-registration before a single dollar of marketing had been spent on it. Think about it. 14 million people were waiting for the product to launch, and that's 11 years of trust built up all at once. The product ended with 826 million in 15 months and 61 million in one single month. China's female gaming market grew about 124% that year because of this product. And as you can see, the studio designed for the female gaze instead of for the male gaze. So that brings me to the central conclusion of this research. Inclusive design stopped being an equity question. It became a commercial one. The studios treating it as a value conversation are slower than the ones treating it as a product strategy. And that's not an observation anymore. It's in the revenue data. I included 4 recommendations in my reports, a frameworks across team composition, product KPIs, community safety, and long-term design identities, each with concrete first steps for the studios to look at. I want to close out again on something personal. I came into this fellowship as an advocate, asking why women are underrepresented in game development, and whether that produces worse outcomes for players. The question still matters to me, but the data changed my understanding. The industry had followed commercial logic, not malice. And the finding I didn't expect was gender inclusivity in gaming had already become a revenue strategy before it became a policy position. East Asian Studio proved it commercially first, not because they were more enlightened, but because they were adapting to the market faster and more efficiently. The advocacy argument and the commercial argument had converged. Studios that understand that they're the same argument are moving faster than the ones that are still treating them as separate conversations. The fastest moving studios are not the most enlightened, they're the most commercially observant. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you, GATE, and thank you, BMO.